Are you looking for a super easy 3 granny square Easter basket pattern that holds its shape and is super easy to do? This tutorial is for you. Hi, it's Krista at the Secret Yarnery. Today we are turning 3 granny squares into a super cute and practical Easter basket. It is not too big, not too small, and looks so cute with Easter eggs. If you want to make these Easter eggs, there's also a tutorial. This is double crochet, so they are super fast. It's like a 3-minute egg. So you can make a ton of these in no time at all. I'll link this egg tutorial in the description box and in the comments down below. To make your super easy 3 daisy granny square Easter basket, you're going to need yarn. So just the 4 different colors, and you can use whatever color you want for your basket. So yellow for the center, white for the petals, green for the leaves, and then whatever color for your basket. All of mine are just scraps of regular worsted weight acrylic. This is 10 ply if you are in Australia. Just anything that is, even scratchy yarn is perfect for this pattern because it helps the baskets keep their shape. So if you're thinking like Super Saver or anything like that, yes, grab that yarn. You are going to need 2 grams for the yellow, 12 grams for white, 15 grams for green, and 31 grams for your basket, whatever color you're using for your basket. And this basket also features a nice solid bottom, so you're not going to lose anything out of the bottom of your basket. So to make your super easy 3 daisy granny square Easter basket, you're going to need your yarn, of course, plus also a 5mm crochet hook. If you are using a thinner yarn or you can't get 4 weight or 10 ply, use a smaller hook, maybe use a 4mm crochet hook. You'll also need a pair of scissors and stitch markers, 3 stitch markers. They help if you are new to crochet, and a needle for sewing in your ends. Here are the timestamps. You can jump back into where you left off, and let's get started. To start your daisy granny square basket, we're just going to start by making our center of our flower, so just in a yellow color yarn. Make a slip knot, shrink that down, pop it onto your hook, and chain 3. If you want to start with a magic ring, you are more than welcome to. Now we're just going to slip stitch into that very first chain we made. Just pop your hook in and slip stitch to join, and chain 2. So this doesn't count as a stitch. And holding that center open with your finger and thumb, we're going to make 11 double crochets into the center of our ring, taking care to go over our tail. So that's 1 double crochet. We need to make 11. 2, 3, 10, and 11. Now we're going to slip stitch into the top of our first stitch to join. So we're going to slip stitch into the top of our first double crochet. So we're ignoring that chain. Into the top of our first double crochet, slip stitch to join, and chain 1 to secure your yarn. Cut your yarn, leaving a long enough tail to sew in with a needle later. Pull your hook up and your yarn through. Snug that down to secure. And now we're ready to start the petals. We're just going to start into this stitch right here. So there's our join. Our join has our chain 1, and it also has a little stitch after and a little stitch before. We're ignoring all of that for now. We're going to start into this stitch, the first stitch right after the join. Just pop your hook into that stitch. Grab your petal color. So I'm using white. Bring it through and slip stitch with both strands to join. Drop your tail, just holding along the top edge of your work, and chain 3. 1, 2, and 3. So this counts as our first treble crochet, and into that same stitch, we're going to make 3 treble crochets. So that just means you're wrapping your yarn twice to start, and into that same stitch, 3 treble crochets. So wrapping your yarn twice, bringing your yarn back, and then a triple takeoff. So take off 2, and take off 2. So 3 treble crochets into this stitch. Pull up a bigger loop of yarn and take your hook out. And we want to go into the top of our chain, so not our 3 stitches, not 1, 2, 3. We want to go into the top of the chain, this guy right here. Just pop your hook in. You want 2 strands on the top of your hook, and put that loop back on your hook. Shrink it down and bring it through, just like that, and chain 2. So there is our first petal. Now wrapping your yarn twice into the next stitch. So we're working into each stitch all the way around. Into the next stitch, we're going to do 4 treble crochets. So 4 treble crochets. And now a bigger loop again, and take your hook out and into the first treble crochet we made right there. We're going to pop our hook in and put that loop back on our hook. Bring it through and chain 2. So we're going to do that into every stitch all the way around. 4 treble crochets. Pull up a bigger loop and take your hook out. Put your hook in to the top of that first treble crochet we made. Loop of yarn back on your hook. Shrink it down, bring it through, and chain 2. So that is a 4 treble crochet popcorn and a chain 2. So you can pause the video, just do that into every stitch all the way around. I'm going to meet you when you get over here to that join area right there. When you get back to our join area, we're going to go in before our chain 1 and we're going to go in after our chain 1. So we're turning that stitch into 2 stitches. It just helps it look nice and spaced out around our circle. So still do your chain 2, and into this little part of the stitch before our chain 1, we're going to do our 4 treble crochet popcorn. So there's 4 treble crochets. We're just going to turn that into a popcorn. Chain 2, and we're going to do that into the same thing, into this last stitch. And you can work over your tail. So wrapping your yarn twice, 4 treble crochets into that little stitch after the join. Like that. Going into that first stitch to turn it into a popcorn. Chaining 2, and now we're going to slip stitch after our first petal. So if you look at the other side of your petal, so just moving it to the side, you can see that first chain we did. We're going to slip stitch right in to that chain after our popcorn. So pop your hook in, slip stitch to join, chain 1 to secure your yarn, cut your yarn, leaving a long enough tail to sew in with a needle later, pull your hook up and your yarn through, snug that down to secure, and now you'll have 12 petals all the way around your flower, and it's nice and evenly spaced out where our join is. We're not skipping over, so it looks really nice and even in the center. So you need to make 2 more of these. So now we're ready to add the leaves. You can see where we joined our yarn, our petal color. So that is 1, 2, 3. We want to go into number 4 right here. So just so we can work over this tail, but this tail is going to be the corner. So we get extra stitches to cover it up. So 4 spaces over, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Pop your hook into that space and put a loop of leaf color yarn on your hook. Bring it through, slip stitch with both strands to join. Drop your tail just holding along the top edge of your work and chain 2. Into the same space, we're going to make 2 double crochets. And if I'm going too fast or too slow, you can speed me up or slow me down just by hitting that gear on the video right there. Now into the next 2 spaces right here, we're going to do 3 double crochets into each. So 3 double crochets. And into the next space, 3 double crochets. Now we're at the space with our tail. We're just going to bring that tail forward so we can work over it. And into that space, we're going to do a corner. Corners, 3 double crochets, chain 2, and 3 double crochets. And we can work over that tail. So 3 double crochets, 1, 2, and 3. Chain 2. You can slide those stitches forward if you need more room, and 3 more double crochets into that same space. Into each of the next 2 spaces, we're doing 3 double crochets into each. Like that, and now into the next space, we're going to do a corner. So 3 double crochets, chain 2, and 3 double crochets, all into the same space. Three double crochets into each of the next 2 spaces. So there's always 2 spaces in between our corners. And into the next space, 3 double crochets. We're doing that twice. And into the next space, we're going to do a corner. Corners, 3 double crochets, chain 2, and 3 double crochets, all into the same corner space. You can slide those stitches forward if you need more room. You always want your stitches lying flat side by side. Into each of the next 2 spaces, 3 double crochets into each. And now we're right back where we began, so we can slide those stitches ahead to give ourselves some more room, and we want to do 3 double crochets into the same space where we began. So 3 double crochets into the same space where we started. Chain 2, and we're going to slip stitch into the top of our chain to join. So we're just going to slip stitch into the top of our chain. We want 2 strands on the top of our hook and slip stitch to join and chain 1. Cut your yarn, leaving a long enough tail to sew in with a needle later. Pull your hook up and your yarn through and snug that down to secure. So there is our square. You want to do that 2 more times. And now grab whatever color you want your basket to be. And I'm just going to start in the corner before our last join. You could start in any quarter space. Just pop your hook right into that space. Loop of your color on your hook, whatever color you want your basket to be. Bring it through, slip stitch with both strands to join, And drop your tail just holding it along the top edge of your work and chain 2. So this counts as our first double crochet, and into the same space, 2 double crochets into that same corner space. Just like that. And now we want to find our sets of 3 stitches, or the top of our petals. And we're going to be working into that space in between the stitches. So wrap your yarn and go into the space in between those stitches at the top of your petal and make 3 double crochets. At the top of the next petal, or skip 3 stitches and work into the next space right there, 3 double crochets. And 3 double crochets after the next set of 3 stitches, just at the top of that petal, working into the space. So each space along the side gets 3 double crochets into the space. Now when you get to the corners, just drag that tail forward so you can work over it, or whenever you get to your corner where you joined. And we're going to do a corner. So 3 double crochets, chain 2 and 3 double crochets, all into the same corner space. We're just going to be working over that tail as well. So 3 double crochets, chain 2, and 3 double crochets into the same corner space. And again, we're just going to look for the top of those petals, and those are the spaces we're going to make in between those sets of 3 stitches. Into the first, 3 double crochets. Well, it's 3 double crochets into each space. And corners are always going to be corners. So 3 double crochets into each space along the side, and there are 3 spaces. There's 2, here's number 3 right there. And now into your corner, you're going to do a corner. So 3 double crochets, chain 2, and 3 double crochets. Just like that. So now you're going to keep going. 3 double crochets into each space along the sides, and corners, 3 double crochets, chain 2, and 3 double crochets. All the way along, I'll meet you when you get back into this space right here where we began. If you'd like to follow along with the written pattern, all of my patterns are available on my website, secretyarnery.com, and all of my patterns are written in plain English, just like I was sitting there right beside you. When you get back to the corner where we began, we're going to finish with our 3 double crochets into that same space. Chain 2, and slip stitch into the top of our chain to join. And you always want 2 strands of that chain on the top of your hook. So slip stitch into the top of the chain to join. Chain 1 to secure your yarn. Cut your yarn, leaving a long enough tail to sew in with a needle later. Pull your hook up and your yarn through and snug that down to secure. Now you want to go ahead and do this round, leaving one side empty for your next square. So get your completed block above you in your work area, and you've finished 3 sides on the block we are joining. We just want to get ourselves arranged. So the finished block is above, and we're working along this row here. We're just going to join as you go. So after my 3 double crochets into that corner space, I'm just going to go right over and slip stitch into the corner space on the block above, our completed block. So just put your hook down into that corner and bring up your yarn and slip stitch to join. Chain 1 and 3 double crochets to finish off this corner on the block we are working on. You can just let that finished block hang there, don't worry about it. So there's our 3 double crochets to finish our corner. Now lay everything nice and flat again, and we want to go into that next space right there. We're just going to put our hook down into that space and bring up your yarn and slip stitch to join. And now work into the block we're working on. So 3 double crochets into that space right on top of our petal, right there, 3 double crochets. Lay everything out nice and flat. We want to go into that next space. Just put your hook down into that space and bring up your yarn and slip stitch to join. Drop that completed block, and we're going to work into the next space with our 3 double crochets. And we're just going to do this all the way along this last side of our square. So 3 double crochets into the space. Put your hook down into the next space on the block we have finished. Grab your yarn and bring it up. Slip stitch to join. And 3 double crochets into the next space on the block we are working on. Like that. Lay everything out nice and flat and go down into the next space. So slip stitch into the next space to join. And now into your corner space, 3 double crochets into our corner space. And if this is tricky, just give it a try. If it's hard, you can always finish your blocks and then sew them together or single crochet them together, whatever you'd like to do. I like this way because it just saves yarn. Well, it doesn't save yarn, but it saves tails. We don't have to sew in an extra tail. So there's my 3 double crochets into the corner space. Find the corner space on the block we have finished. Put your hook down and bring your yarn up. Slip stitch to join and chain 1. Now into the top of our chain, we're just going to slip stitch to join. Just pop your hook in and slip stitch to join. And chain 1 to secure your yarn. Cut your yarn, leaving a long enough tail to sew in with a needle later. Pull your hook up and your yarn through and snug that down to secure. So now we have joined 2 blocks. We need to join 1 more. So for your next block, we're just going to finish one side. Just like that. So just on one side we have finished, and I've done my 3 double crochets into that corner space. So now again, get yourself situated. It doesn't matter which end we're joining to. Just pick one and put it above you in your work area. And now we have our one side completed, so 3 sides empty. And we're just going to do the same thing. So on into the corner space, I'm just going to pop our hook down into the corner space, grab your yarn and bring it up, and slip stitch to join, chain 1, and 3 double crochets into this corner space on the block we are working on. So same as we did before. Just like that. Lay everything out. And now into the next space, we're just going to put our hook down into the next space and bring your yarn up and slip stitch to join. Drop your finished squares. We don't have to hold them or anything. Wrap your yarn and find that next space right on top of the petal and make 3 double crochets. Like that. Lay everything out nice and flat. Find the next space and just put your hook down into that space. Grab your yarn and bring it up and slip stitch to join. Now into the next space, we're going to do our 3 double crochets. Lay your work out flat and find the next space on the block we have finished. Bring your yarn up and slip stitch to join. Wrap your yarn and into this next space. right on top of that petal, 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. Lay everything out nice and flat. Put your hook down into the next space. Bring your yarn up, slip stitch to join. Drop your finished work and just make your 3 double crochets into the corner space. 1, 2, and 3. Lay everything out nice and flat and into the corner space of the block you have finished. Pop your hook down, bring your yarn up, and slip stitch to join. And chain 1. Now rotate your work so we can work along this one side. So on the one side, we're just going to finish off our granny square. So 3 double crochets into the space for our corner. And 3 double crochets into each space along the side. So pause the video, keep working along. I'll meet you when you're in your corner space right over here. So I made my 3 double crochets into each space along the side and 3 double crochets into that corner space. And now we're going to get ourselves situated again. So now the row we're working on is in front of us. But we have to loop or fold our work. Would have been cuter if I sewed in my tails for you, but I did not. And then just fold this top granny square in half, or just fold it generally so we can see it. I'm just gonna put like a handkerchief in between so you can just see the stitches better. You do not have to put a handkerchief in between yours. Just like this, and then just be folding it like that. So it is a tube. Okay, so now we're going to do the exact same join. It's just been folded right here. Put your hook down and bring your yarn back up and slip stitch. Chain 1 and 3 double crochets into the corner space on the block we are working on. So our join is always the same. This one's just a bit weird because we have folded our granny squares. Now into the next space, we're going to put our hook down, bring our yarn up, and slip stitch to join, and 3 double crochets into the next space on the square we are working on. Lay everything flat. Find your next space, bring your yarn up and slip stitch to join, and 3 double crochets into the next space in between those stitches on top of your petal on the block we're working on. Lay everything flat, find the next space on your completed block and just pop your hook down, bring your yarn up and slip stitch to join, and 3 double crochets on top of the next petal into that space. 3 double crochets. Lay everything flat, find your next space on the completed block, put your hook down and bring your yarn up and slip stitch to join. And now we're in our corner space. We're just going to finish off that corner with our 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. Get everything laying nice and flat. Find that corner space on the block above and slip stitch to join. Chain 1. You can rotate your work a bit so that we're working along this edge. And now into this chain, the top of our chain, we're going to slip stitch to join and slip stitch into the top of our chain to join. So 2 strands on the top of your hook, slip stitch to join and chain 1. And into that same chain right here, we're going to make 1 single crochet. So 1 single crochet into the chain And if you're new to crochet, you can pop a stitch marker into that stitch we just made, just to mark our first single crochet. Now 1 single crochet into each stitch, all the way around, or all the way until we get to our join. So 1 single crochet into each stitch. When you get closer to your join, into the space, 1/2 double crochet, that's the space before the join. Into the space after the join, 1/2 double crochet. And into the first stitch, 1/2 double crochet. So it makes that join a little bit flatter. And now 1 single crochet into each stitch all the way along until you get closer to the next join. When you get closer to the next join, we're going to do our 1/2 double crochets. So 1 into the stitch before the join, 1 into the space before the join, the space after the join, and the first stitch after the join. So 4 1/2 double crochets. So 1 into the stitch, 1 into the space, 1 into the space after the join, and 1 into the first stitch. Just like that. And now single crochets, 1 into each stitch all the way along until you get closer to where we started. When we get back to where we started, 1/2 double crochet into that last stitch, 1/2 double crochet into the space before the join, 1/2 double crochet into the stitch after the join, and now we are back to where we started. So I'm just going to slip stitch into that first single crochet we made. I'm just going to slip stitch into that first stitch. And I'm going to slip stitch into the next stitch. So 2 slip stitches, like that. And now we're going to do our handle. So to start the handle, chain 1 and turn your work. And you want to look at your stitches at the join. So our join is here. We want to work into 4 stitches at the join. Now into that very same stitch right here, we're going to make 1 single crochet into the same stitch. So there's 1. You can pop a stitch marker into that stitch if you're new to crochet, just to mark that first single crochet. And we're going to do 3 more. So we want a total of 4. So that was 1 into the next stitch is number 2. Into the next stitch is number 3, and into the next stitch is number 4. Like that. Chain 1 and turn your work. And into that very first stitch, right here, 1 single crochet. And if you are new to crochet, again, every first stitch of the row you can pop a stitch marker into if you're worried that you're going to miss a stitch. And then 1 single crochet into each stitch. So a total of 4 single crochets for each row. And you can pop a stitch marker into your first stitch after you've turned your work. So you can just move that stitch marker up to mark your first stitch of the row. And you can do that all the way if you want to make sure you're having a super straight edge. If you are a more experienced crocheter, or you don't need to do that, but that's an option. So 4 single crochets and a chain 1 to turn. So there's 2, 3, 4, chain 1, turn your work, and 4 single crochets going back. So starting in the first stitch, 1 single crochet, 2 single crochets, 3 single crochets, and 4 single crochets, chain 1, turn your work, So now you can pause the video and just keep working along your handle. So 4 single crochets and a chain 1 to turn until your handle is about 11 or 12 inches tall, or whatever height you want yours to be. It will shrink. We're going to do a little slip stitch so it doesn't stretch as much. So it's going to shrink up. So make your handle, if you're customizing it, make your handle a little bit longer than you think you want it to be when it's finished. So pause the video and I'll meet you when you have done enough rows so that your handle is about 11 inches. So I've done 45 rows and it is about almost 12 inches long. A bit short of 12 inches long, 11.5 inches long, or 45 rows, or whatever length you want yours to be. And I'm just going to fold this little tube in half, or the basket part. We want to line it up with the center of this flower. And then fold it in half so it's touching. You could also just sew it together if you don't want to do any more join as you go. You could just chain 1 and pull your yarn, like cut your yarn, leaving a long enough tail to sew it together, and then just sew it into the center. But I'm going to show you how to join as you go our cute little handle. So we just want to join into the center these 4 stitches here. It doesn't matter exactly. These are our center 3 stitches, our center cluster. So if you pinch it and look up, like if you put your fingers along the same line as those stitches on an angle and pinch it, you'll see 4 stitches at the top. So there's 1, 2, 3, and 4. We're going to start into this guy right here, and we're going to join into those 4 stitches. So I'm just going to pop my hook down into that stitch and slip stitch to join. And I make 1 single crochet into that first stitch and go down into the next stitch and bring my yarn up and slip stitch to join, and 1 single crochet into the next stitch of our handle and slip stitch into the next stitch to join, and single crochet into the next stitch of our handle and slip stitch to join, single crochet into the last stitch of our handle and slip stitch into the next stitch to join. Chain 1 to secure your yarn. Don't cut your yarn. You can just turn your work. We're going to work along our handle now. So into this, and we're going to work into, let me show you, each of these little holes along the edge. So we're going to start here, and then here, and then here, and then here, all the way along. So each one of those little holes along the edge, we're going to work into each one. And we're just going to slip stitch. We're going to start into that very first hole, or that very first spot right there. We're just going to slip stitch, and then into the next little hole along the edge, we're going to slip stitch, and we're going to slip stitch into each of these little spots all the way up our handle. So here, 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 all the way along. So each row is getting a slip stitch, and we're just going into that space. We're not worrying about it. Into the space, we're going to slip stitch. Like that. It's going to shrink up our handle a little bit. Just make sure you get into each of these stitches. So each of those little holes along the edge gets a slip stitch. So it'll look like that. And you just want to keep working all the way up your handle. You can pause the video, just slip stitch into each of these rows, just into that space, all the way along. You'll get a nice little braided edge, and it'll help your handle not stretch. So one side super stretchy, one side not stretchy. So keep working along your handle, and I'll meet you when you get right over here to the bottom on the other side. When you get to the end of your handle, we're going to slip stitch into that last space or that last little hole, slip stitch, and now we're going to work along the edge of our basket. So from the last spot on the handle, we're going to go into the first real stitch of the basket. So just go all the way down into the edge of your basket now and slip stitch. And we're just going to slip stitch all the way around. If you are a tight slip stitcher, you might want to relax going around your basket. You don't want to cinch in your basket too much, but it also does help the edge stay nice and crispy. And to tell how it's looking, just make sure, take a look and make sure it's not like all cinched together like a ball. You want it to still be flat like that. So just adjust your slip stitches so it's not too tight and not too loose. So to make it looser, just pull your hook up a little bit after you've made that slip stitch. And make sure you're always going up onto the fat part of your hook as well. And then just pause the video and keep working along all the way until we get to our handle. When you get closer to your handle, we're just going into each stitch like we have been, and then we're going to slip stitch up on the handle side. So we're going to slip stitch in here. We want to join this area. So we're slip stitching into the first spot of our handle. So slip stitch to join and chain 1 to secure your yarn. Cut your yarn, leaving a long enough tail to sew in with a needle later. Pull your hook up and your yarn through, snug that down to secure. And now we want to do that on the other side of our handle. So one side doesn't really stretch and the other side still stretches a lot. So now we have to do this other side. So on the other side, I'm just going to work into this last stitch right here. So the last stitch on the side of our basket before the handle. Put a loop of yarn on my hook, bring it through and slip stitch with both strands to join. Drop your tail and chain 1. Now I'm going to jump right over into that first stitch or that first space on my handle and slip stitch. And now slip stitch into each row or each one of those holes all the way up. Same as we did before. So we're working into the big holes and small holes. So there's big ones you can see and there's smaller ones in between. So the small one and the big one, the small one and the big one, the small one and the big one, all the way along your row. So just keep slip stitching all the way along your handle, and I'll meet you when you get to the end where we start on the basket side. When you get to the end of your handle, just make sure you go into that last row. And our handle went into this stitch. So our handle is coming out of this stitch right here. So we're not going to slip stitch into that one. We're going to start into the next stitch right there. So pop your hook into that stitch and slip stitch to join, or slip stitch into that stitch. You're not really joining, you're moving on. And we're going to slip stitch into each stitch all the way along this side of your basket, all the way until we get to the handle. And just remember, you can always control how loose or how tight your slip stitches are by how much you pull up on your hook after you have made them. Just remember, you're not working at the very tip of your hook. That's much too tiny. You want your hooks or your loops to match this fat part of your hook or be a little bit even bigger. So slip stitch all the way around. I'll meet you when you get to the handle. When you get to the handle, we're just going to slip stitch into that first stitch. Slip stitch to finish and chain 1 to secure your yarn. Cut your yarn, leaving a long enough tail to sew in with a needle later. Pull your hook up and your yarn through and snug that down to secure. So now your handle and the top of your basket are done. And now is a good time to inside it out and just get all of those tails sewn in. And then we are going to be ready to make the bottom. You could do a magic ring if you prefer, but I'm just going to do a chain 3 ring. So make a slip knot and shrink it down, pop it onto your hook, and chain 3. 1, 2, 3. And now we're going to go into that very first chain right there. Just pop your hook in and get yourself situated. So you want to pull that chain 3 down underneath your hook to form a U shape. And you want to hold it open with your finger and thumb and have your tail running along beside it, like that. And then slip stitch to form a ring. Don't let go of that center. And chain 2. 1 and 2. This doesn't count as a stitch. And you want to make 12 double crochets into the center of your ring. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You can also pull your chain and slide those stitches back to give yourself some more room. You want a total of 12 double crochets into the center of your ring. So there's my 12 double crochets, and we're going to slip stitch into the top of our first double crochet right there. So we're ignoring that chain 2. We're going right into the top of our first double crochet to join. So slide that stitch on your hook and slip stitch to join and chain 2. So again, our chain 2 doesn't count as anything. Now into the very same stitch right here, we're going to make 2 double crochets. 1 and 2 double crochets into each stitch all the way around. So we started with 12 double crochets. For this round, we're going to have 24. So you can pause the video and work around 2 double crochets into each stitch, and I'll meet you when you get back over here where we began. When you get back to where we began, just make sure you worked into 12 stitches and that you have 24 stitches now. So there is 1 spot. I just look for these spots. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So that is 24 stitches. And we're going to slip stitch into the top of our first double crochet to join right there. So just slide your hook under those 2 loops or 2 strands or the V and slip stitch to join and chain 2 again. So it looks like that. Our chain 2 doesn't count as anything. So into the very same stitch right here, we're going to make 1 double crochet. That counts as our first stitch. And then 2 double crochets into the next. One double crochet into the next, and 2 into the stitch after that. So we're just alternating doing 2 double crochets and then 1 double crochet, 2 double crochets and 1 double crochet all the way around. So there's 2, there's 1, there's 2. So you can pause the video and just keep working around 1 double crochet into 1 stitch and 2 double crochets into the next, all the way around your circle. You'll end up with 36 stitches, and I'll meet you when you get right back over here where we began. When you reach back to where we began, you're going to end with 2 double crochets into that last stitch. If you didn't, you could just take a look back and make sure you did 1 double crochet and then 2, 1 double crochet and then 2, because you might have just either done 1 double crochet into 2 stitches or 2 double crochets into 2 stitches side by side. So just make sure you have 36 double crochets. It doesn't matter as long as you have 36. and slip stitch to the top of the first double crochet to join. So we're going to slip stitch into the top of the first real double crochet to join, and chain 2 again, and into the same stitch right there, we're going to make 1 double crochet. That counts as our first stitch. And if you are new to crochet, you are welcome to pop a stitch marker into that stitch just so you can see where it is to join. That could help you if you are new to crochet. And now into the next stitch, we're also going to do 1 double crochet. So for this round, the repeat is our increase, so 2 double crochets, and then 1 double crochet into 2 stitches. So there's 1, and then there's 2. So 2 double crochets, and then 1 double crochet, 1 double crochet, and then 2 double crochets into the same stitch, and then 1 double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. So we're just spacing out those increases. And now around your circle, you can just grab 3 stitch markers and just pop a stitch marker in, doesn't matter where. Well, it does, kind of space them out. But it doesn't really matter, you just want to mark a couple areas. All right, so there's my 3 stitch markers. I'm going to take out my starting one because I know where to go, but if you don't, you can leave that one in. So now we have 3 stitch markers, and the stitch marker means we need to do an increase. So we need to add 3 stitches to this circle. Now, don't freak out, it's super easy to do. So in this new area here, I'm going to make an increase. I'm going to add an extra 1 of these 2 double crochets into 1 stitch. So I'm already supposed to do 2 double crochets into the next stitch because I did 2 double crochets, 1 double crochet, 1 double crochet. So I'm going to do 2 double crochets into each of the next 2 stitches. So this keeps the pattern going, 1 double crochet, 1 double crochet, 2 double crochets. But I'm going to do another 2 double crochets into the stitch, and I'm going to do that when I get to each of these stitch markers. Approximately, it doesn't matter exactly where, we just want to make sure that we do it 3 times. So into the next stitch, 2 double crochets. So that's our extra stitch. And now I'm just going to go right back to the pattern. So 1 double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches, and 2 double crochets into the next stitch. And I'm just going to keep repeating that all the way along until I get into the area of my next stitch marker. So 1 double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches, and 2 double crochets into the next stitch. Now when you get to your stitch marker area, it doesn't have to be exactly there, but I've just finished my 2 double crochets into 1 stitch. So I'm going to do that again into the next stitch. Just an extra 2 double crochets, or instead of 1 double crochet, we're doing 2. And I'm just going to pop that stitch marker out because I've added an extra stitch. And now just keep going with your pattern. 1 double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches, and 2 double crochets into the next. Just like that. And now pause the video and keep working around until you get somewhere closer to your next stitch marker, your 3rd stitch marker. So I'm getting close to my stitch marker, and my next stitch is getting 2 double crochets. So I'm just going to do that into each of those 2 stitches. I'm going to pop that stitch marker out. So I've used up my 3, or I've done my 3 extra stitches. So into the next stitch, 2 double crochets. And into the stitch after that, 2 double crochets as well. And now I'm just going to keep going with my regular pattern. So 1 double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches, and 2 double crochets into the next, all the way around until you get back to where we started, which luckily is right here. Like that. And now we're ready to slip stitch into the top of that first real double crochet to join. Right there, so slip stitch to join. And now we are ready to join this circle to the bottom of our basket. So you don't have to worry about doing anything right now. We're going to keep our yarn attached, and now we're just going to join it to the bottom of our basket with single crochet. So it's super easy to do. So now we're just going to attach our circle to the bottom of our basket. So I'm just going to go in to that one of those corner spaces. And I'm just going to slip stitch to join. And now we can just pinch our work together. So pinch your circle and your basket and find the next stitch of your circle and the next stitch of your basket. Just like that. And make one single crochet. So put the next stitch of your circle on your hook and find the next stitch of your basket. So you have 2 stitches on your hook and make one single crochet. So you have 2 stitches on your hook, bring your hook back and make one single crochet. So we're just going to do that all the way along until we reach the next join. So just matching up your stitches, making one single crochet into both stitches to join them up. All the way along. And you also want the pretty side of your circle facing out so that your basket matches. The outside is pretty and the inside, it's also pretty, but just make sure you joined it like that. Pretty side facing out. So just keep matching up your stitches from your circle and your basket all the way along until you get to a join. And then when you get to a join, we're going to crochet one stitch into that corner space. So the next stitch from my circle goes into that space before the join, and we'll make our single crochet. And then the next stitch from the circle goes into the space after the join, just to fill it in. And now just keep working your way along, one single crochet into each set of stitches, all the way along until you get to the next join. So here at our next join, I'm going to go into that space. So into the circle, I go into a stitch, and into the space on my basket, I just go into that space and make one single crochet. And then the next stitch from the circle into the space after that join of the basket. And now just keep working along until we get to the next join right where we began. Now when we get back to where we joined, I've gone into my last stitch. So this stitch is going to go into the space before the join. It's hard to show you, but you're still going to go into the space with one stitch from your circle. And then the last stitch from your circle goes into the last space, the one after the join. So there's all of our single crochets. And now we can just go in and slip stitch to join. You could do an invisible join if you want, but it's the bottom of your basket. Chain 1 to secure your yarn. Cut your yarn, leaving a long enough tail to sew in with a needle later. Pull your hook up and your yarn through. Snug that down to secure. Sew in your tail and you're finished. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial as much as I did. I'm waiting for you in that video up there, and stay hooked.